Thank you for downloading this episode of the Nerdball Podcast. Live from my basement, as always, I am Lorenzo Melcher, the host of this podcast. If you are new, check us out on all our social medias. If you search on Twitter or X, it's the Nerdball Pod. Facebook and Instagram, it's the Nerdball Podcast. I'm on TikTok, so subscribe there at the Nerdball Pod. Look for my stupid face on the red logo, and you will know you're in the right spot. If you're listening to this on any Apple or anything like Apple, Spotify, Google, any of those things, make sure you hit subscribe or whatever it is to make sure you never miss an episode of this podcast. It's going strong for 3 years now, have over 200 episodes. So it's exciting. So keep doing everything you do to help this podcast. Also the YouTube page, check out, search the Nerdball Podcast on YouTube to find all the videos there. If you want to see our faces as we make each other laugh or cry or anything else. I've had some people say they prefer YouTube because they like actually seeing expressions. So check that out. We have been getting a little more views there. So let me know what you think. Subscribe there, hit that little bell. All the stuff that you do to help the podcast is free. So thanks for doing that and getting notifications on your phone every once in a while. So this podcast coming up with my guest is Justin Marchand. He was great. As I say about all my guests, because they're all great, talked about learning how to play the guitar, being in the military, having 5 daughters. It's all there. It's all ready to go. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Justin Marchand, and this is the Nerdball Podcast.
This is the Nerdball Podcast with Lorenzo Melcher.
Awesome, Justin. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Lorenzo.
Yeah, the apparently elusive Justin Marchand.
Yeah, scheduling conflicts.
No, you're good, man. You're good. I get it. I was thinking about it today. I go, I think I might have canceled once with you too. So
I hope so, because that'll make me feel better about myself.
We'll just say that. We'll just say that. Well, yeah. Thanks again, man. I'm looking forward to this. I always have one question I ask everyone is to start out. What is something you nerd out about? Something you're really into, a hobby of yours, something that gets you away from daily grind stuff, just something that either you do it by yourself with your family, something you've been doing for a long time, a hobby you picked up, cooking, you like watching movies, whatever. Like, what is something that you really nerd out about?
I'm glad you started with an easy question. Guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing since I was 12 years old. I'm passionate about guitars, and you can surprisingly go down the nerd obsession of guitars to include like their components and the types of wood that they're made out of, and it gets pretty deep. But yep, guitars and music.
So was that just because you got interested in it when you were 12, or like your family, friends?
My dad was a musician growing up. I didn't live with him, so interesting fact is he lived up here in Perrysburg, Ohio, and I lived in South Carolina when I was younger. And I called him up over the phone. I would talk to him like weekly. I was like, Dad, I want to learn how to play guitar. So the first 2 years I took guitar lessons, he taught me over the phone. He mailed me a book, and I had a guitar in my location in South Carolina, and he would say, all right, study pages 1 through 5 this week. And then I'll back before cell phones, they were like the landlines. We would do like weekly guitar lessons, and I just kind of ran with it from there and have loved it ever since.
How do you teach somebody how to do it through the phone? First of all, I feel like you have to be a really good musician to just hear it, right? Because a lot of it, when you're in person, you can say, oh, put your finger here, or your finger's supposed to be here. But when you're just hearing it, it's got to be pretty difficult.
Thinking back, that was probably like 1996 or 1997. So that's really before we had easy access to the internet and stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't very difficult. He mailed me the book. The book was just a very basic beginner's, like how to read music and things like that. So it was easy to understand. And before he would give me like pages 1 through 5, and I would kind of read over them and ask any questions. And I'd say, no, I understand this. And I would just practice. He recommended practicing like a half hour a day. So I would do that. And the next week, 7 days later, he was like, all right, I want you to play what you learned on pages 1 through 5. So I would take the landline, set it down on my lap by the guitar, play, and he would have a book with him. So he was kind of following along, and he would tell me like, good job, or you made some mistakes or some things like that. And surprisingly, it was easy to develop that way. Nowadays you have YouTube and all the technology and stuff,
Yeah.
so can't imagine anyone doing that nowadays. But that's a pretty cool part of the story, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know if your relationship with your dad was this. I mean, if you had a good relationship, I'm sure this is something that built upon that. But if you didn't because you lived far away, I'm sure this helped that too.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I always admired him when I was a kid because I would see him. I think when I was super young, maybe 3 or 4. He would take me to like his band practices. He was in like rock bands, and um, watching that, I think it was just kind of turned me on to music early on. But yeah, it helped strengthen our relationship, and we bonded over it ever since. And I mean, we're now at the point where we sometimes play gigs in local bars and restaurants together. So
Oh,
that's
yeah, man. That's great. That's because you never know what's going to happen when your parents are separated and how that's going to work out because it's a lot of work and it's not the kid. It's not on the kid. It's a lot of work
sure,
is on the parents. Like
for
it's
sure.
it's your job and he was teaching his son how to play guitar over the phone, man. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, thinking back, I never really thought about it from his perspective. It had to have been a lot of work, especially where he was with a full-time job and trying to maintain that. But we did it for, yeah, probably 2 years straight. And then my whole goal when I started was like, I want to be a better guitar player than my dad because he could play
Uh,
the guitar solos, rock guitar solos and stuff like that. And it never made sense to me. And I was like, that's my goal. That's my end state, is to be as good or better than him. And yeah, we did that for about 2 years before I kind of just took it off on my own.
where are you at on that goal?
I think you would have to ask him. I think I've surpassed him,
Yeah.
but after playing for you, that wasn't after a while that wasn't my goal anymore. It was just like enjoying what music does for me. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and
What was your first guitar?
my first guitar, the brand I think was Regal. So my stepdad that I lived with in South Carolina had this old guitar that he had learned on. Um, and it had to have been 40 or 50 years old at the time. So it was just a beater acoustic
Mm,
guitar. But I'm glad I learned on it because, so for people that aren't familiar with guitars, this is my dog.
I am not.
So the if you can see here where the strings are, they're
Yep.
very distance to the fretboard where you have to press down. You don't
Mhm.
have to apply pressure. On the guitar that I learned on, the strings were probably maybe a half inch off the fretboard. So it took a lot of strength to
Mm,
press. At that time, I thought it was normal. So it really strengthened my hands learning on that guitar. By the time I like upgraded to a decent instrument, it helped me so much. Like, wow, I don't have to press so hard. My hands are actually strong now. And I built the calluses on my fingers and stuff from those old rusty strings. But yeah,
so your stepdad played music too. What was his involvement in you learning? Was there any besides like here you have this guitar?
he wasn't as much of a musician. I think he played a little bit when he was a kid, but he really turned me on just to listening to music.
Uh,
He was into a lot of the oldies. In the '90s, I guess oldies was music from the '50s and '60s. Now I don't really know what we consider oldies anymore. Some people consider '80s music, I guess. But yeah, I like the Motown type stuff and older '50s and '60s type music. So he kind of inspired me for that route, while my biological father was inspiring me from actually the instrument itself.
well, it's good to have like I mean, it's music, it's all music, but they aren't competing things that are happening. Like one is physically showing you, teaching you how to play the guitar, and the other one is like, hey, listen to this thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And
It's,
they were my father and stepfather were not friends by any means. I don't, they didn't necessarily get along, but yeah, those two, like you said, you just mentioned how it's about like when parents are separated, it's really about the kids and their welfare. And thinking back on it, like I just have positive memories of them kind of sharing music with me. So
that's cool. That's cool.
yeah,
What about your mom? Was she involved in music at all with you?
kind of the same. She wasn't a musician, but she turned me on. She took me to all my first concerts. She took me to like in the '90s, Aerosmith, and I think when Kiss did one of their 10 reunion tours or whatever, she took me to see them. That was mind blowing. I wasn't like a Kiss fan of their music, but just the theatrics and the production they put on their show was mind blowing. So she exposed me to a lot of live music, and that was life changing for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Like whenever, I mean, you're a dad now, and I try to give my kids experiences that I would hope they remember, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, but some of them are going to stick. I remember some things my dad did for me and my brother and sisters, and even for me it's more sports related. And he would take us to Cleveland Indians at the time. He would take us to those games, and we got to watch Cowboys games when we went. I think we went to one when we were in Texas one time, and like all these experiences that we get to have. And I think we try to do that now, especially our kids are getting older. So it's harder to buy Christmas presents. So we're trying to figure out, like, all right, let's have experiences, because I think those might mean a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. That's something my wife talks about a lot. Like, rather than just material gifts, sharing experiences with them. And I try to be tuned into that as well. Like, always being conscious that everything you do with your kids, like, I remember things from my childhood that my dad or my parents are like, how do you remember that? It's just like some kids, and always trying to have great experiences with them, because when we're gone, eventually one day we're going to be gone, and that's what they're, the memories. So.
The memories, and they'll get to see their dad sound like an idiot for over 200 episodes of a podcast. So
yeah. What this, by the way?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Which episode number is this?
So you will be 208.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I did, and it's out by now. But I did decide that I'm only doing one episode a week from now on. And it might not be, for forever, but it's if anything, it gives me a little bit more time back, because it is time consuming. Even this weekend, I had 2 podcasts yesterday and 2 podcasts today, just to try to get, and it made me feel better, because, like, all right, I recorded 4 podcasts. That's a month worth of podcasts right there that I already recorded. So it is a lot of time. And I still have the 3 different dads podcasts I do with my 2 knucklehead friends. And so it's just, to go along with the experiences, it's just having that time. Now, it may seem like a simple thing, but it just dawned on me a few weeks ago. Like, my Mateo plays video games, and sometimes he'll ask me to play with him, but sometimes he just wants me to watch him. And I remember when I was playing video games, I would do that with my dad too. Like, hey, Dad, can you watch me do this? And that thought of, like, yeah, this is just something that he wants me to sit there and watch him, talk to him about it, laugh with them or whatever.
Yeah, it's awesome what you're doing too as well. I see a lot of parallels with what you're doing and what musicians do. And I recently I didn't watch the entire podcast, but the one with George Smith that he did recently. Yeah. Haven't seen or talked to George in probably like 10 or 15 years. So watching it, I didn't know he had a child. My God. It was really cool to watch. And I was cracking up. He was talking about how I think you asked him the question about, like, what are you nerding out on? He started talking about praying mantis. What? It was great.
Dude, that was wild. That story was wild. I made a TikTok out of it. I've been doing some TikToks too. And that was a wild story. But it's good to, like, thank you for, for listening to the episode. But it's good to, like, hear people talk about it, and because I want people to hear what I'm hearing. Like, all these things are cool to me. Like, I love information, and even it might seem like a simple thing to you, or maybe not, but just like hearing your dad teaching you how to play guitar over the phone is wild to me. And it's like it's like a cool story. And, like, wherever you go with music, you have the story, like, yep, this is how I was taught to play music, a long time ago. We had phones,
for sure. And it's cool you're taking information, as we all know, like with social media and the way the internet is today, there's so much like negative or false information out there. And you're doing something positive with it. You're putting positive information out in the world, and entertainment as well. It's great, man.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah. You mentioned, I think you said that pink guitar was your daughter's guitar. There's always a balance of, like, wanting your kids to enjoy what you enjoy because you want to enjoy it together, but also, like, where's the line of, like, I'm forcing them to do this? Like, how is it with your daughter? Like, hey, here's a guitar, you want to try? Or, hey, Dad, I want to learn how to play guitar.
Yeah, I'm at the point now where it's so I have 5 daughters, and they're all different ages. And
First of all, hold on. 5 daughters is crazy to me. But go ahead. We'll definitely talk about it.
I'm at the point now where their ages are 3, 5, 7, 9, and 14. So I had to prepare that, because I always screw that up when people on the spot. But their ages are all over the place, and I haven't got to the point where I'm not, like, pushing it on them at all. I put instruments around the house and talk about music, and they see me playing all the time. But I don't really try to push it on them at all. I'm going to see if they naturally spark an interest, kind of like I did. And I think some of them have started to express that yet. We haven't really gotten to formal lessons, but I show them things here and there, and try to when I hear their types of music that they listen to, like it's like modern pop and things like that, I'm not really into it. But I'm trying to remember, like when I was a kid, like I was probably listening to things that my parents weren't into. So I'm trying to really get into their stuff. So I can, oh, look, you can play this little melody from your pop song guitar, and then also not. Um, I don't know if I'm the best teacher, but like when I teach them things, remembering that they don't know anything about this instrument, it's foreign to them. I've been doing it for 25 or 27 years or whatever. So I don't want to. When I do jump into teaching them, I don't want to overwhelm them at all. So,
Well, yeah, that's a good point too, because my one of my assistants at work, she always says teaching teaches the teacher, and I learned that too. Like you have to start from zero, and then maybe it kind of reinforces some stuff, that you either forgot, or like, oh yeah, I should reincorporate that, or they ask questions that you never really thought of anymore because you figured that out 20 years ago. And
yeah.
it just reinforces ideas, and it gets you thinking a little bit more, and they learn better because you're learning also.
Yeah, and it's a test of patience too. Like just having
Yes.
$5 always a test of patience, but like you have to deliberately like slow down, like deliberately slow yourself down when you're trying to teach things like that.
Yeah, my
But
my dad always said when we had Mateo, he was just a baby, but we were just talking about life in general, and he was like, however many kids you have, they're going to ask you to help, like they want to help with whatever you're doing, and it's going to take 3 times as long, but you have to let them help, because at some point they're not going to want to ask anymore.
yeah,
Like they want to be involved, and they want to help, and they want to do all the stuff. And just like podcasting, Lillian loves to do it. Like she'll ask me like, Dad, can I come on? She has a podcast called the Princess Pod. So she'll come on like on the end of episodes sometimes, and just because she likes to do it, and she's really good at it. She likes to talk, and I can have conversations with this little 9-year-old girl about things, and it's fun. And so and you try not to push that stuff, just like we were talking about. But the same thing with football. Like I had people ask, like, what if Mateo doesn't want to play football? I was like, well, then he doesn't want to play. I'm not going to be upset about it. Like he's, as long as he's involved in something, some sort of club, he plays an instrument, he doing another sport, just be involved in something. And that's,
yeah,
that's
active
yeah, yeah.
for sure. I
But
feel
it
like
is,
you want your kids to about what you're passionate about because
Mhm.
you're about it, but they're different people. Yeah, and that's hard to remember too, that you've created this little people, but they're unique in their own ways, and they may not like the same things that we like. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You mentioned a few times about the music you listened to growing up. What is that? What music did you like listening to? Let's say high school, a little after high school.
I've always been open to. I think it's because of my parents and step parents and extended family have exposed me to so many different types of music that it's never been one genre. So
Okay.
like rock music, all decades. I love 90s hip hop. Like if anyone asked me right now, like who's your like top three musicians, Tupac would be one of them. I love
Mm.
Tupac poetry. I love how passionate he was when he delivered his verses. Um, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, just kind of like all over the board. And even some of the genres, like I'm sure your listeners will understand when I say use the term bro country. It's like
Yeah.
these modern country that's it's heavily produced in these professional studios and things like that. That's probably one of my least favorite genres, but there's still a bunch of songs I like that I hear out of those genres. So yeah, I
I,
don't know.
I,
I
I
wouldn't.
don't know. I don't know a lot of like musician names and band names, but that bro country, there is somewhere I like it. I like the sound of it, like the beat, like because I like rap music and hip hop,
Yeah,
and so I like the beat and I like rhyming. For whatever reason, like it catches my ear and it sounds really good. Like it's just I don't know. And it can be real simple, and sometimes approximate rhymes. You have to use approximate rhymes, but they're so clever. Like Lil Wayne's does that quite a bit, but like to me, it's so clever, and I don't know. It's just something I really enjoy listening to.
yeah. So yeah, same here. And I've learned a lot about like that genre specifically, how like the producers are, Jake Paluski, I know he's your brother-in-law, and
Yeah.
to him a lot, and learning how some of the stuff you hear on the radio these days is it's designed um to affect people that way. There's algorithms and there's all kind of
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's wild. But to me, sometimes I like hearing deep, songwriter type stuff where it's just someone that pours their heart out on acoustic guitar. They've written the music, they've written the lyrics, and it's just from a human. It's like that human connection. And then sometimes I like to hear the fun, carefree bro country party stuff, R&B. it's not exclusive to country. Every genre has its commercial stuff you hear on the radio, but yeah, I like everything, man.
Good.
All right.
Yeah. When you're talking about lyrics, I like emo music. I was into emo for a long time, and I still, that's some of my favorite bands. But I love listening to like Taking Back Sunday and Dashboard because of the lyrics. Like when you're in high school, you're just listening to it, you're singing the lyrics because you know. And then as I got older, I started paying attention a little bit more. I'm like, man, these are really good. Obviously, some of them we knew, like, yeah, this is pulling at heartstrings or whatever, or talking about some breakup and stuff. But I enjoyed like the writing of it, and obviously that was in my very formidable years of high school where
Oh
that
yeah.
really attached to me. And even now, like I still, just yesterday I was listening to Taking Back Sunday, their Tell All Your Friends album. Like that's my favorite album of all time, and I'll forever listen to that thing.
Yeah, for same here, man. Yeah, when we graduated the same year, so like I was really
Mm-hmm.
into the like My Chemical Romance and
Yeah.
bands like that. So yeah, I'm never shy away from anything that's just appealing to me. And I'm sure the same way. If you think it's good music, it's good music. And yeah, and
Yeah.
that's kind of been a part of my development as a musician over the years. Like you just mentioned, like I did not care when I turned 12 and started playing guitar until the time I was probably like 25 years old. I did not care about lyrics. I just cared about the music, like the guitar, the drums, the bass, what the song sounded like. And yeah, I would have like lyrics stuck in my head, but I never thought about their meaning. Now that I'm like approaching 40 and I guess I have a little more wisdom, I think more about the lyrics and yeah, I get more fulfillment out of listening to music now just because the lyrics are a huge part of it.
Well, for the longest time, whenever I would see you, you were just playing the guitar, and then and then at some point, I'm like, oh, he has songs and he sings too. Like I didn't know that was. I mean, I'm assuming the whole time you're playing guitar, you're also doing that. But I never noticed it because you're always just a big part of a band, whatever the band was, and somebody else
Yeah.
is singing.
Yeah, that's how I was growing up. And then once I started to like dabble with songwriting, it really made me respect songwriters. Because I thought, this got to be easy. It's like, writing a poem, but then I'm like, wow, how do these people write these like complex, these lyrics? And it's something else I'm trying to develop. I never really, early on, I didn't feel comfortable sharing them. Now I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable sharing songs that I've written with and singing them. And Toledo, like I don't know if a lot of people know, but this area has a great music scene,
Mhm.
both for cover music, like party bands and things like that, and also original music. So, and all the people are great that I've met. So they've helped me kind of come out of my shell a little bit and not keep everything to myself. So,
I because Jake is so heavily involved in the music scene. Like I've been to a lot of places and seen a lot of different local bands and stuff. And one thing I did notice, because he was, and I think at some point everyone is part of those cover bands, and because that's what people. There's just like regular old Joes that work a 9 to 5. They want to hear the music that they know. They don't necessarily want to hear this guy that lives in Perrysburg and has an album, and that's very specific. So a lot of you musicians are involved in cover bands, but it's very hard to simultaneously be in a cover band and do your own thing. Like you can do it, but just watching Jake made a shift at some point to say like, I'm going to do some cover stuff, but I'm also going to focus on more heavily focus on my thing, because he even said, and Jake is really against the grain in a lot of this stuff. So, but he realizes like, yeah, I got to play some cover music because that's what kind of pays the bills a little bit, and then I can do this other stuff.
for sure. And I think it goes back to like fulfillment too. As a musician, I used to get so much fulfillment out of just being like provided an opportunity to play my guitar in front of people, even if it was like Perrysburg, like a pep assembly or something like that. I'm like, I get to do this. I've developed this skill enough where I can do this and feel confident about it. But then, and then cover songs, yeah, it's like it's a good way for extra income to make money and you entertain people. But I think um, artists like Jake or people who write their own music or their own lyrics, things like that, you get to a certain point where you're like, okay, I'm playing other people's songs. I want to share my own. So I think Jake's found an awesome balance between the two, and it's cool to watch him. He's definitely like musically a mentor. It's awesome to watch him expand and definitely go against the grain too. And he's helped push the local music community forward. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, he's super involved in that, and lucky for me, he's been able, he's helped me, and I've He's put my stupid podcast logo on some shows we've done just because I helped him produce them and that kind of stuff. And but to see, especially what he's done with the listening loft, like that like I've been to several shows there, and it's crazy. Like what this was nothing, and now it's become this really like local thing that people really enjoy going to.
Yeah, that's amazing to watching what Jake's created. So I just came back. You are in, yeah, I think I came back I was in Syria for almost a year, and I would basically that year is pretty much when Jake really amped up Levi and Lilac's listening loft over there. And I think about halfway through the trip over to Syria, I was like, I would love to do that when I come home. Do you have any openings? And we picked a date, and what he created there, seeing it through social media, through Facebook, and just through my cell phone was one thing, but then seeing it in person is just like, it's mind blowing. So I encourage anyone who's watching this, got to give props to Jake. If you get the chance, go out and check out one of those shows, regardless of whether it's music or comedy or some of the new, I think, skit style shows that they're putting on up there. It's awesome.
Yeah, and he's open to, like, I asked him about certain things, like, hey, can we do this? Can we try this? And he's like, yeah, and he's very smart. So even if I were to come up to him and say I want to do this thing, like, he's going to ask questions and make sure everything's going to go well, because it's still his space that he created, and he wants everything to do well there. But he's open to ideas, and having different styles of music in there, or like you said, comedy shows now. Like it is a fun place, and just to be a little bit a part of it, is pretty neat. How was your show when you went there?
So for me, it was like, that's the pinnacle of my, I'm an amateur musician. I'm not doing anything serious out here, but like, that's the pinnacle of being a musician. Usually you're performing in places, sports bars, things like that, where there may be a lot of people. Maybe there's 200 people in there, but they're often like eating dinner, watching TVs, and, communicating amongst themselves. What Jake has set up is, it's a listening event. They're sitting in chairs. All the chairs are oriented towards the stage. And he gives you this great introduction. And I've never been as nervous as I was that night before I walked out. He does this introduction, and I was behind the curtain with my bass player friend, Byron. And Byron never gets nervous either. He's like, calm down, man. You got experience. And then right before we walked out, I looked at him and saw the nerves on his face. And I knew I was in bad shape. Like, Byron has played Ashanti and some of the biggest names in music. And I'm looking at him, and he's getting nervous. And I'm like, oh, no. But went out there, and for like the first 10 minutes was almost like a blur to me. My nerves and my adrenaline were going. It was wild. But then once things calmed down, I just kind of soaked it in. And it's the best musical experience probably best social experience I've ever had in my life. Being able to share the stories and the songs that I wrote, and have people just sit there and watch and react, and interacting with the people. And another cool thing is it's a ticketed event, so you have to go out and kind of promote it and sell tickets. And all these people that were in this room, they're all from different aspects of my life, like the military, church, music, people I haven't seen, in years. And having them all in the same room at one time was just kind of mind blowing to me. I kept looking around at all these people that I never expected to be together, listening to me play. But it was an awesome experience. The fact, like, what he's created up there is like magical. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is a cool experience when you said it's like the pinnacle. I remember when I used to do stand-up comedy a little more regularly, like when someone paid me $20 to like host a show one time, and I was like, man, this is it. Like, I'm cool now, man. Like, this is it. Like, to have people there for you again, that's probably why you were nervous, but it is like this great feeling. Like it's everything you're working towards is paying off in this one moment, and it might be 100 people, but at that point, those 100 people are the most important people right now, because they paid to see you, and you alone. Your name is on that sheet.
And it was therapeutic for me too, as well. A lot of the songs I write are just about life experiences, some good, some bad, and being able to. Usually, I'm sitting in this room right here in my basement, just doing it in a vacuum by myself, and being able to broadcast out to all these people in like face to face was I don't know, it was a surreal experience. So
well, that's cool, man. I'm glad. Congratulations. I'm glad you're able to do that. It is a cool thing, and it's not like there's a show every night there. Like these are picked shows by Jake for a reason. So that's a cool opportunity.
I'm excited to get out and see. I haven't seen one yet. other than the one that I performed at. So I'm really excited to go out and if you do another comedy one, check it out, or some of the musicians that play there, and get it from that or get to experience it from that perspective rather than all the nerves and being up there.
Yeah, man. Someone asked me if I got nervous before I do comedy. I said I'm nervous every time, but as soon as I start talking, I know what I'm gonna say, like, and then it goes away. It's just the build up to it. I'm sure that's how it was. You do. You mentioned, like, after 10 minutes, you're like, all right, well, this is just me playing music, and now there's people watching me.
Yep. Yeah, and you get after the first song. I intentionally picked the first song that I was going to play was be like one that I'm extremely comfortable with, and it wasn't technically hard to play on the guitar, so that I could just kind of relax a little bit, and that helped out a lot. But yep, after the first song, I saw that people, it was dead silent in there when I was playing, and that's something I'm not used to. So like hearing some clapping, some positive reactions afterwards, I'm like, okay, this is okay. We can get through this.
Can someone clink some glasses and put a football game on while I play? Make you feel more at home.
And it's also like the nerves, those experiences. I try to tell my daughters this. I'm like, they're like, how do you speak in front of people, and how do you like sing songs in front of people? I'm like, it's a horrible experience at first because you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. But I try to teach my kids, and even like the soldiers that I mentor that are junior soldiers, like any chance you get to push yourself out of your comfort zone, whether it's public speaking or with fitness, anything you can do, it develops you as a person, and you reap the rewards of it, and it's all about being fulfilled, I guess. But I enjoy those types of things.
I also feel like if you're not nervous a little bit or second guessing you, then it doesn't mean a lot to you. Like then you can go out there and just mess up, and you're like, well, whatever, I don't care. It means something to you to be nervous and to be scared, and like, because it's important to you, to whatever you're doing. Like you said, it's a lot of different stuff. Whatever you're doing, you want to do it well, not just for you, but more specifically for whoever your audience is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned you have 5 daughters. That's so crazy. I have one daughter, and we even said, like, my wife said if we had her first, we probably wouldn't have any more children. Like, it's a lot to handle. But how hey, a couple things. Day-to-day life is, even just 5 kids, let's just leave the daughter part out of it. Just 5 kids in general is a lot. Like, it's a lot of work, a lot of communication, and throwing the top of that is, you just talked about being in Syria for a year. Like, you're gone a lot. Like, there has to be, I mean, your wife is a rock star, but there has to be like things set up for all this stuff. How do you just manage everything? Like, let's say you're at home, you're at home, and there's a lot of things, moving parts here. There's a lot of communication that has to happen.
Just like our household, just like yours, I'm sure, is just like a living, breathing animal. It's like a well-oiled machine. Yeah, like you mentioned, my wife, she's a rock star. I couldn't do anything without her. But to me, we have our routines. It's normal. So I don't know anything else. So to me, it's all the year away. That was like the biggest test of our family, and I was so nervous. I knew before I had to leave for a year, I knew like several years in advance that it was going to happen. And I knew it would probably be my last trip overseas. And I had so much anxiety about it. And it really wasn't for me going overseas. That part I'm used to, but leaving my family back at home, and, my wife we really don't have family local either. Our closest family is about an hour away. So it was challenging, but I was blown away at how she was able to do it, how she was able to juggle so many things and stay positive. And it was a challenge, and it's wild, but I enjoy it. Like, I can't imagine not having kids and being in a quiet household. I don't know what I would do. Although it's crazy, it's chaotic most every night. Our bathroom drains get filled with hair regularly, but it's amazing. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
I don't know how you deal with that, but our tub is older, and there's not really a stopper in there or anything to catch his hair. So what I do every, I don't know, couple of weeks is there's an old toothbrush in our shower, and I stick it in the drain and twist it, and then I pull out the longest hair like ever. And there's only 2 people that have long hair in this house, but it's a couple of times a week, and I'm kind of impressed on how big these things can get.
Yeah, it's wild, and then it just like falls out. You don't even know, it just falls out. Drains, like you never see it happen. But yeah, usually about every week here, I bought this little, because I tried every trick in the book. I don't know if I tried a toothbrush, but like clothes hangers, all these little plastic devices. But I found something that's like little plastic basket, and you put it in your bathtub drain, and that's been pretty awesome. But every week I have to clean that thing out, and it's not just hair; it's like hair like covered in slime, and it's like some Ghostbusters. I'm like, how does it happen over a week? But that's pretty gross. But
Yeah.
I guess
Part of life. Yeah, part of life. Um, you you've been in the military since what? Since you're 18? Like, was this
20 and a half years? Yep.
okay? God, dang, that's a lot. That's a long time. I mean, can't you be retired by now?
Yeah, I can. So out of my 20 years, 3 of those years were like reserve time where I was still in, but I wasn't serving in like an active duty capacity. So I could retire now, but I'm gonna do a few more years to get the full like active duty retirement. So
Okay.
technically, yeah.
Okay. So, what made you join to begin with? Because I mean, we talked about us being in high school, and obviously, um, the time that you decided to join was shortly after, a few years after 9/11, and where I'm assuming that was a big part of it. But what was the main like thing? Because that was I had family members in it, but I knew like that wasn't like me. Maybe if someone would have forced me to do it, I could have done it, but I tip my hat to anyone who wants to do that because that I knew I couldn't do it.
I would like to say that like I joined because of 9/11, and I wanted to go fight for my country, but at the time that I joined, it was more for personal reasons. Obviously 9/11 affected me a lot because I was a junior in high school and I watched everything that happened that morning on TV, so that was impactful. When I knew what I like signing up meant that I would be involved with the conflicts that were kicking off. But
Mm.
for me at the time, I was kind of like lost as a person. Not really lost, but I didn't know where I wanted to go in life. I had just moved. I lived with my mom my whole life and my stepdad, and I just moved to Perrysburg. I moved in with my dad, and when I was a junior, and I just like didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't think I was ready for college, which looking back on it, it was a smart decision because I don't think I would have been successful in college. I wasn't really like into the academic part of high school, or just school in general. Later on, I started to enjoy a little bit more, but I wanted to go find something that would give me a little bit of discipline and help me kind of establish myself in life away from my family and kind of build something on my own. So, and then choosing the branch was difficult. I remember being a junior at Perrysburg in my first like 6 months living up here, and just I had some extended family that were in different branches, and I talked to them, and I was like, I don't really know what to do. And I heard that the Marine Corps had the hardest basic training or boot camp, so I was like, I want to try that. I want to see if I can make it through that. So I joined the Marines. And as far as like choosing a job and what I wanted to do, I thought maybe later in life I would go into law enforcement because I have some. It's another thing I just didn't know. My dream of being a celebrity musician, it kind of like drifted off a bit. So I'm like, what do I have to do that's realistic here? And I thought about law enforcement a lot. So I chose to be go into the military police field in the Marine Corps. And they in the Marine Corps, they take every job field. So like police, they'll take like military police and break it down into individual branches like corrections, like you're going to work in the prisons, or field MP, field military police officer, where you're out in the field with the infantry guys all the time. And so I got put in corrections, which meant my 4 years in the Marine Corps was all going to be prisons. So, and then soon after joining, I realized that, civilian police departments and law enforcement, they don't necessarily like that really, it doesn't really matter that you were a military police. But I didn't know that at the time. I was like, this will be a good decision. But
Well, that's what I remember. My dad would talk to me about it, and I would talk to my uncle who was in the army, and he's like, they would say, if you're going to go into military, know what you want to do, because if you don't know, they're just going to put you where they need you, and it might not, or where they need somebody, and it might not, it might be you're working on tanks. Well, how is that going to how are you going to do something with that after the fact? So if this is the route you want to go, choose something, which is still a big decision because yes, college is one thing. You're paying for all this money to go to school, and then you got to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. But it sounds like it could be the same thing here. Like, what do you want to do, and is this a possibility?
and then when you're asking that question to a 17-year-old, like my brain wasn't fully developed. I don't feel like I even matured I was like late 20s. I made all my mistakes and got in all my trouble and did my stupid stuff in my early 20s. So at 17 years old, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I looking back on it, I'm really glad I made the decision. And my dad helped kind of guide me. He wasn't in the military, but he kind of helped guide me, and he agreed with my thought process that I needed something. And I'm glad I did, because I probably would have ended up at like BGSU and failing out my first semester. But
That was me.
which, I mean, that's how you learn. I
Yeah.
learned a lot of life, especially in my early to mid 20s. I learned a lot in my life from like crashing and burning and learning the hard way, unfortunately. But that's all, you gain wisdom from it all. But yeah. That's a piece of advice I would give to if you have any listeners that are maybe in high school and they're thinking about joining the military, like take that extra time, don't rush into it. Try to think about what you want to do in life, or even just a general general idea of what the path you want to take, because there's hundreds of options out there in the military.
Yeah. How many times have you been deployed?
I've been deployed to combat zones, three deployments, and then I spent 2 years in Okinawa, Japan, which wasn't a deployment. I was just stationed over there.
What are there any? Was there any at any time? I know when you're over there, especially in the Middle East and combat zones, you're there has to be something in your mind like, well, I could die. Like, or maybe you don't, because you shouldn't think that way. You can't think that way because it's going to mess up whatever else you got going on. Were there times where you're like, was there any time where you're like, yep, this is it, this because of what's happening around you?
Yeah, there was. So I mean,
And again, I don't want to, if you don't want to talk about this stuff, that's fine too. I know how some people are, especially being in the military, with PTSD and all that kind of stuff. It's very interesting to me, but I just want to make it known, like as long as you're comfortable talking about this stuff, please go ahead.
absolutely, I'm comfortable talking about it, and I appreciate the questions. But so when I did the 4 years as a prison guard in the Marine Corps, just a little bit of backstory, and that job was not really a deployable job at the time. They later changed it to where you could deploy in that MOS and work in prisons overseas. But that's one thing that turned me off about it, because I joined the Marine Corps. And like I said, I didn't join because of 9/11 or like I wanted to go fight. But once I got in, I became a part of the fraternity and the brotherhood and all this camaraderie. I was like, I want to deploy. I want any chance I can get, because it's a rite of passage for Marine, soldier, airman, sailor. So I didn't get my chance in the first 4 years. So I switched over to infantry into an National Guard unit, Army National Guard unit in Ohio. And right off the bat, they said, we're deploying. So I was like, I want to go with you. And that was my first deployment was to Kuwait and Iraq. And I did convoy security, where I was just like a gunner up on top of a Humvee. And I never really, I mean, there were some thrilling moments. We found roadside bombs and things like that, but there was never a point where I always knew every day, like I could die or I might have to take someone's life. But there weren't really any times during that deployment where I felt like I was in imminent danger. A couple years later, we came back from that one in like 2009, and then 2011, it was a pretty short turnaround. We went to Afghanistan, and that was the first time where I felt I had the feeling of like something bad's going to happen. We had 3 senior soldiers that were killed in a suicide attack. Basically, it was a kid had a vest strapped to him with explosives, and he found them. They were out patrolling in the town where our base was, and it was a target of opportunity. I don't think he set out with the intentions of attacking Americans. There was some other plan in place that the Taliban had come up with, but they found that opportunity of the Americans out there. They attacked him, and it killed 3 of our soldiers. And I remember that, like that day, I just felt like imminent danger. I'm like, okay, like this is going to keep happening. This is going to be a long deployment. It didn't continue to happen, but that was the only time where I felt like, oh man, this is it. And Syria. So yeah, we came back from that deployment in 2012, and then I didn't deploy again until last year in 2022 for Syria. And there were some moments close to that where I would definitely felt in imminent danger with some of the Iranian militias that were launching attacks over there, but and that never had that feeling quite as strong as I did when I was in Afghanistan. But
when you're out there and you tell that story of losing 3 soldiers, like how do you go on because you have to? Like how do you mentally just like keep trucking, like keep going? And it'd be so difficult.
Yeah, it is. It's because I think the way you do it is just you're not there by yourself. You're there with I was in a platoon of between 30 and 40 people, and our platoon was in a company. So you're there with all these people, and that's really how you do it. And you see You see people react differently. Some people break down, but in the end, we know this happened. That attack happened to us. We got into Afghanistan in like around January. The attack happened in April, and we knew we weren't going home until like July or August. So you pretty much you spend a little bit of time mourning, but you have to. There is no like I want to go home. This is too it was too much. I need to go home. That isn't like an option. So you just figure out different ways to get through it. Yeah, and it definitely affects people differently. I'd never experienced anything like that. So my platoon was actually out at the same time it happened. When it came back to my base, our platoon leader, he's a lieutenant, very like this guy was your I don't want to use the term jock, like your stereotypical. Tell he's like used to be a football player, a wrestler, just very alpha type male figure. And he was crying, and when he was sharing the news with us, he was crying. So to me, that alone was like kind of shocked my system. I'm not used to seeing this guy cry, and then I'm just kind of processing and keep it all in. And I went to eat dinner that night with some of the guys in my squad, and we're just eating, and it's kind of quiet. We're all trying to figure out how to process it, and I just started crying. I didn't like it; just came out of nowhere. So like it's natural. I mean, the emotions are natural, and that's why you hear a lot like people that have never been in the military or experienced trauma like that. That's why a lot of people come home and they have those lingering issues, I think, because you're with this tight group of people, a large group of people overseas going through these unique experiences, sometimes traumatic, sometimes not. But then you come home and usually everyone's good for the first few months, but then 6 months passes and the joy or the excitement of being back home sometimes wears off, and it affects people differently. Some people turn to alcohol, drugs. Some people just handle it as a part of life, and they continue to drive on and do what they have to do. But a lot of people struggle. So, and that's been a constant challenge throughout the history of war, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's the stigma of mental health, as opposed to the Vietnam veterans and World War II veterans and things like that. Like the mental health stigma is kind of going away, where now the U.S. government and the military are really trying to support the people that are struggling with that rather than, kicking them to the curb. So that's awesome to see. But
I was trying to do the math, but if I did it right, which isn't my strong suit, I think you had your oldest daughter when you were over there in 2009 to 11 or whenever that was. 2011.
Yes, she was born soon after I came home. Yep, I got to come home. Came home midway through that tour for 2 weeks of leave. That first deployment, I don't know why, but we got 2 weeks during the deployment to come home for like R&R. That's the only deployment I had that luxury on. But yeah, she was born soon after that one.
What did you notice any difference in yourself as far as your decision making or risk taking or whatever after you had kids?
That was weird. Well, after that, we had our oldest daughter, and then a big gap between the rest of the daughters. And when I first came back to that deployment, I didn't notice it at the time, but I mean, looking back on it, that was a period of my life. It was about a 1.5 to 2 year period where I was just like out of control, making. I don't think I was dealing with stress properly, and I would, I had all this money saved up too as well from the deployment, so it just like I resorted to alcohol. I drank too much. I went out to bars, and just that's where I got my stimulation from, just hanging out in bars, and that turned into bar fights. That turned into like a lot of trouble for me, and luckily I had family support that helped me get through it. And really I told you it was a short turnaround from my first deployment to the deployment in Afghanistan. And at the time I was like, this sucks. We're going right back out on another deployment. But looking back on it, I think it helped save my life, because I was just on a path of destruction. When I got the notification for that deployment, it kind of reset my clock. I was able to stop doing all the stupid things I was doing. And that's where I feel like as a man, that's where I started to gain some wisdom and realize what's important in life. Like when I have a family and have kids, then I need to do this the right way. I don't need to be out like getting into bar fights for no reason and just drinking alcohol all the time. And I do drink now, like social or casually, but not the way I was doing it in that period of my life. So that small fraction of my life was I was taking crazy risks, doing things that I'm not proud of, but I do like to share it, especially with new soldiers that join the military. I share all the mistakes that I've made, and I'm telling you guys this not because like, hey, I'm the old guy now, I'm the old Army guy now that's been there and done that. I'm sharing it so you guys learn from my mistakes. But now I try to, yeah, I don't feel like I take a whole lot of risks.
Now
But
you're old, so
yeah, I am old, especially in military years. Like being close to 40 is like grandpa. I mean, it's wild.
I'm sure there are people like that. You get such ridiculous nicknames. I remember I was playing flag football, and there was a guy. I think when I was playing, we were in our mid-20s, and there was a guy that was like mid-30s, and that's what we called him, Grandpa.
Yeah,
But
like this is your podcast, but I wanted to ask you a question. I feel like I was never really involved in organized sports in high school, but I think there's probably a lot of similarities between like the way the military is ran, specifically for me in the infantry. We run squads and teams, and you're trained to just fight versus like the mentality of a football team. Like, what's your approach to coaching? How do you? I don't know. That's
so,
it. I know open-ended question, but
no, it's good because me personally is if you were to ask the players that I coach, I'm a tight ends coach. So if we're talking specifically about football, but this kind of pertains to like anything I'm coaching. I used to coach track. I'm coaching softball right now. I coach baseball. I've coached all kinds of stuff. But specifically for football, if you ask the players, they would say I'm 100% a players coach. Like I am for them. I want them to have a good time. I want them to succeed. All this stuff. So I ask them questions and make sure they understand everything that I'm saying. And if they have any issues or anything, that they can come to me and ask me questions and know that I will. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it for them. But I am a resource for them. It's they are playing the game. I am here to help in any way I can. And for most of that, it is me wanting them to have fun because that's what it is. Ultimately, I keep telling them like, hey guys, this is a game. Like there's gonna be hard times and there's gonna be times when I yell at you and other coaches yell at you and but it's a game. I want you to have fun. I want you to smile. If you cry, I'll be there to hug you. If like all these things happen and I'm there for you as much as you want me to be involved. And some of them, there's a kid that I used to coach when I was a wide receivers coach. He's an assistant coach for us now. He graduated. But we would go out. We went out to dinner a few times, and now we get to share those experiences together as a coach. And I'll be involved as much as outside of football as you want me to be, or if you just want me to be your football coach, I'll be your football coach. But I learned a long time ago that they do like to communicate, and as long as I'm open with them, they will be open with me. And right now, their form of communication is Snapchat. So if I'm on Snapchat with them, and I play Fortnite with them, I play video games with them sometimes, and I just want them to understand no matter what happens inside of football or outside of football, I'm there for them. If they need me for something, I will help them with whatever they need, and I want them to know I'm in their corner.
that's like very similar to the approach I take with military leadership. The only difference is one's a game and one's not a game. But
100%.
I've learned a lot, especially through this last deployment to Syria. I was put in a position as a company first sergeant, so I was like the senior enlisted member of this infantry unit, and we were sent to support a special operations unit, which was very cool. But for me, it's like my first two deployments, I wasn't really a leader. I was just a soldier, following others. This one, I'm the senior leader, so it took me a good 30 days to really settle into that. And but yeah, like what you were saying, communication is huge when it comes to leadership or coaching and mentoring, and not just saying, hey, this is what you have to do, go do it.
Yeah.
Learned a lot, really learning the soldiers that I work with, like what they enjoy, what motivates them, how to get them to respond. In the military, sometimes you tell someone that they have to do what you tell them, but I don't want my soldiers to respect me because of the rank or the stripes that I'm wearing. I want them to respect me for how I conduct myself and like the person that I am. So, yeah.
Yeah. I never tell the players because every year that we get new sophomores that don't know me or they know me a little bit because I'm around Perrysburg, so sports so much. But I never, unless they Google me or look me up, like I don't tell them that my accolades I got. I just want them to know that this year I'm coaching you, and this is all you got to worry about. That's the other stuff's not important. I had a question about you being a leader in the military. Do they ask you if you want to do that, or do they just say, "Hey, you're doing this and you're in charge"? Because
Both.
okay, yeah.
Both.
The reason I ask is because some people don't want to be leaders.
Right. Yeah. And it's both. And sometimes there are situations where they call it like the next man up, where, hey, this guy's retiring, he's getting promoted, you're taking the position. And then there's times where you can kind of decline. Typically, if there's no time sensitive event going on, they're like, hey, are you interested in this position? So it's a little bit of both. And I've had both happen to me. Once I took the initial step of accepting a leadership role as a young like sergeant, I enjoyed it. I made a lot of mistakes, but I enjoyed it, and I've accepted every one that's been given to me. I look at it as an opportunity. But on this last deployment to Syria, for me, it was we went to El Paso, Texas, Fort Bliss to train for, I think it was about 2 months. And my senior leader, my company first sergeant, was one of the best. I mean, he's the best leader and mentor that I've ever had in the military in my like over 20 plus years. He's just his demeanor, the way he conducts himself, the way he communicates. On the civilian side, he's like a regional SWAT commander. So he manages like this joint task force SWAT teams. He's always in these high stress situations. But I learned a lot from him. I was so excited to deploy under his leadership. And then about 2 weeks before we flew over to the Middle East, we found out that another unit, he was getting promoted to the rank of sergeant major, which is like the senior enlisted rank in the Army, and they were taking him away from us. And then he had the conversation with me. He's like, you're the next man up. You're taking my spot, and you're going to Syria. And I was just like, I expressed my concerns. I'm like, I've been training with my platoon. Like, we need you with us. He's like, it is what it is, man. Like, he's like, I wouldn't have put you in this position if I didn't think you could handle it. And so it was mixed emotions for me. It was like, awesome. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to to do something like this. But at the same time, like, talk about being pulled out of your comfort zone. And then it was like a trickle down effect. Like when I moved out of my position, someone had to step up and take that one on short notice. And there were some growing pains, but looking back on it, one of the most rewarding, challenging experiences I've ever had in my life.
I've learned if you want to be a leader and these opportunities come up, you're going to take them. And there's always problems or issues arise or whatever. But that's how, like you said, that's how you learn. But you take them because you know that this is what you want to do. And, the higher you can go, the better for you, the better for your family, the better for the people underneath you. Like, all these things happen for the better because you are, you talked about it when you were mentoring kids. You're pushing yourself, getting out of your comfort zone, knowing at the end it's going to be better for everyone.
Yeah. And it's also cool in the aspect of, I remember being a brand new private in the Marine Corps and having I had no circle of influence. Like, no one cared what I said at all about any decision that was being made. I was a number, do a job, go do it. Now, the higher you go up in these leadership levels, you always hear people complain about leaders in the military, like, oh, that guy doesn't care about us. So, like, the higher I've been able to go up, I feel like I want to stay in tune and you have more influence on some of the decisions that are being made. At the same time, I realize, like, still don't have the influence I'd like to, but and then sometimes the higher you go up, I'm not sure if it's like this in coaching as well, but the higher you go up in the military, it starts to open your eyes to why other people made decisions that didn't make sense. Like, oh man, okay, this is why this guy made a decision that nobody liked. And yeah, in Syria, I had to make some decisions that I was used to being close with the guys and friends with all the guys, but there were some decisions I had to make where they just weren't popular with some people, but they had to be made for the better of the organization and the group. So that was a struggle for me, but
Well, that
yeah.
not so much football, but just in uh, it makes me laugh because we're talking about leadership, and that's all I'm talking about. But the two examples are the military and working for a county park system, so there's a little
I mean,
different, but
yeah,
it's all like leadership, right?
yeah,
So, but the same thing, like, as you go up, you're right. You see, like, or just talking to my boss and saying, like, well, yeah, I had to make this decision because of X, Y, and Z, and you understand it a little bit more. Or just a very small example, we had to change how we did our scheduling. And I do the scheduling for my staff, and I had to change because we needed more night coverage. So that means all the people who signed up to work 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. now have to work 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. And they're like, wait a minute, that contractually we're allowed to do that. And I'm sorry, but this is the way it is. And And I always tell them, there's going to be times I want you guys to have fun. I'm going to put you in positions in the work that you want to do, because I know you like to do it, because there is going to be times where I tell you to do something that you don't want to do, but hopefully it outweighs. And that's the same thing here. I talk to the staff, hey, we're doing this, and they agreed that it sucked, but they also agreed that this is for the betterment of everybody and the betterment of the park and the park users. So as long as you can be that person that understands them and understands what they want and helps them get what they want and do the fun things or do the jobs that they like to do, then when those bad times do come, they're still bad and they still suck, but they're less because they know you want the best for them.
Yeah, that's it. In the military, we use the phrase "embracing the suck." Yeah, I got to think about this a little bit at the Levi and Lilac show, but embracing the suck as a group, you acknowledge what's about to happen is not going to be fun. It might be sleeping outside in the rain and cold for 2 days straight. It may be something minuscule, but you all just look at each other and say, it's going to suck. Let's do it with a smile on our face and get through it, because that's our own. So, and that translates, to all different organizations outside of the military as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Justin, I appreciate coming here. I don't want to keep you longer than an hour. You got 5 daughters. I'm sure they're trying to do something with you today. So I appreciate you taking the time. This was awesome. It was a great episode. Again, someone who I'm friends with, and I can say hello and have a little conversation with you, to sit down and talk and learn more about you for an hour. It was great. So
thanks a lot, Lorenzo. This has been a blast. I was super nervous going into it, but had a blast with you, and I look forward to watching your future shows.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again to my guest, Justin Marchand, for coming on the podcast, telling us all about being in the military, having 5 daughters, learning how to play the guitar. His dad teaching him over the phone is wild to me. I don't know. I don't know if it's crazy to anybody else, but I thought that was a great story on how he learned how to play guitar. Check him out. I'm going to see. I will put any links to anything he has in the show notes, so check him out. I'm sure he's out there, and he's always doing different shows at different local bars and restaurants. So check that out. Tell him the Nerdball podcast sent you, and you'll probably get a high five. That's all I can say. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe a thumbs up. Maybe a cool. Thanks for listening. I will always tell you thanks for listening, because you guys make this podcast go. If you have any issue, no, you shouldn't have issues. I hope you don't have issues. If you do, I guess you can email the nerdballpodcast@gmail.com. Or if you don't have issues, what's the opposite of not having, of no issues? I guess I'm an idiot. If you have awesome things to say, hit us on social media. Search the Nerdball Pod. Check out TikTok. Check out YouTube. All the things. Just search the Nerdball Podcast. As always, thanks to Real JP Multimedia, Perrysburg Junior High STEM Lab, Cuttlefish Graphics, and Big Daddy Graphics for always helping out the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.